Welcome back, everybody, and honestly, I feel like I should be welcomed back because I've been gone out of the country for so long. So if you clicked on this video, I'm sure you're wondering, you have a lot of questions. I've gotten a lot of questions about my whole Everest trip that I just went on and why I was in Nepal for like 3.5 weeks. So today is the tell-all. Also, the sun's hitting my room like in a very weird light right now. So if you see dust, it's just gonna happen. So I'm sorry. So first, I want to just kind of generally talk about just a little bit about my trip and kind of give some background information. So I just completed the Everest Base Camp trek, which takes about 10 days-ish, but with travel, you're gone for like 3.5 weeks. But I had a fantastic time. Nepal was super fun. We had a lot of cool experiences there. There was 10 people in my group who went. I had my mom there, my sister, my brother-in-law, my best friend, another one of my friends, my uncle, one of my cousins, and then 2 people that I didn't really know that well, but like we met for the first time on the trek. And honestly, the great thing about going with strangers on this trek is you will not be strangers by the end of it. We got to be really close and I love them a lot. So the trek itself is to the base camp of Mount Everest. If you know a little bit about Everest, obviously it's the tallest mountain in the world. It's in the Himalayas in Nepal, and it is an incredibly dangerous hike. But in order to get to actual part where you start the hike, you have to do like a 9-day trek just to get there. So a lot of people who don't want to pay to go to the top or really risk it because it's so dangerous, they do this base camp trek. It's always been something that I wanted to do, but also something that my mom wanted to do, which is kind of how I got into it, was through my mom. So finally we just decided to send it, got a group together, and we went. The thing that makes the Everest Base Camp trek so different than other treks is because it's so long. Even Kilimanjaro, which is higher than Mount Everest Base Camp, is a lot shorter. So some people compare those two as kind of like 2 of the hardest treks you can do. But the thing that they always come back to with Everest Base Camp is it's just so long. I had an incredible time. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my entire life. That being said, it was very difficult and there was things that were very difficult about it. So I'm excited to kind of share a little bit of both, but I do want to emphasize, like, it was amazing. If you're thinking about doing it, you definitely should. It's just really hard also, which is kind of what makes it amazing. So the first question that I got, and I got a lot of this question, was did I do any kind of training beforehand? I showed a little bit of this on my Instagram in the past year or so, but I did do as much training as I felt that I could. It's kind of one of those things that it's like, oh, but can you really prepare for it? Because it's such a different kind of experience. Like, yeah, you'll be hiking and you can train to hike, but in that moment when you're in the Himalayas, like, there's a lot of other factors there that you can't really simulate. So I felt like I trained as much as I could. I did a lot of hiking. I just obviously got like more physically in shape. I didn't do the most out of what everybody else in our group did, but I definitely didn't do the least. And everybody in our trek made it. 10 out of 10 of us did it. So I think I felt comfortable with what I did. Could I have done more? Yes. Could I also have done less? Yes. I definitely knew it was going to be hard. I think in that moment it was harder than I thought it was going to be, because of all the other factors. The hiking itself was fine. It was difficult, but the altitude definitely affected me more than I thought it was going to affect me. So that was one of the things that I wasn't quite expecting. I would just say one thing that I expected was I expected beautiful views, and it was just even more breathtaking in real life. Like, it was crazy because we'd go outside and we'd look and we'd see a mountain peak and we'd be like, oh, whoa, like, look at that mountain. And then the Sherpa would come up behind us and literally go like, and we'd be like, whoa, because there's mountains above the mountains, which was just so crazy to see. Next question is, why did you stop at base camp and not summit? I think that this is something that a lot of people were wondering, and to be frank, it's because I don't it's too dangerous for me, I guess is the best way I can put it. I think sometimes people don't understand how dangerous it is to summit. So it's too expensive for me, it was too dangerous for me. And also I know my limits, and like base camp was probably a little bit above my limits, but I wanted to push myself to do it. Summiting is like beyond anything I could prepare for, like, without selling my soul to preparing for it for 5 years. So why did you decide to actually hike it? This is a question that I got a ton, and honestly there was a few times on the mountain that I definitely asked myself this, like, why am I here? Why did I sign myself up for this? Because this sucks. But honestly, I think for me it's something that is just so out there and so crazy, and I love doing things that are just like, why would you do that? Like that's the response I've gotten a lot of times. People, they're like, I don't understand why you'd want to do that, but to me those are like some of the most fun experiences because a lot of people aren't going to do it, and it's something that like you can only experience if you're willing to go through the pain and the long hours of hiking and the conditions of hiking in the Himalayas, which is cold, and all these things, and like all these things that people don't want to do, but then there's like this great reward at the end. Like that to me is so enticing because I know that you kind of have to put the work in to get the reward. With the base camp trek, I felt like it was 10% physical and 90% mental, and there's not really, I mean, especially after doing it, I don't think there's anything else that I could do to push myself in the way that the base camp trek did. And it was like such a mental challenge to me. Sometimes on the Everest Base Camp trek, you wake up and like it's like do or die. Like you've eliminated everything else in the world that matters, and it's like you're down to the 5 basics of eat. Like I need to eat, I need to drink, I need to make sure that I'm getting sleep, I like walk. One foot in front of the other and walk, and also like just staying warm. And those are the only things you care about, like truly. Nothing else besides those 5 like survival instincts really mattered, which was crazy. And it sounds crazy, but to me it was a really cool experience and something that I really wanted to do, and I'm glad that I did it. Did at any point on the trip did you feel like you were gonna die or feel fearful for your life? Like I said, honestly, I feel like on the trek it kind of got boiled down to survival mode, so it was a lot of like, I need to eat or I will not survive today. And that sounds dramatic because I know that in like the today like normal society, modern society, we say that kind of as a joke, but on the trek that's reality. Like you have to force yourself to eat or you will not be okay. You have to force yourself to drink or you will not be okay. And so there was a couple times where I literally was like, I'm literally just doing this so I can survive today. There was probably 2 or 3 times where I was like, I feel like I could be dying right now and I wouldn't even know. One of them was I was walking backwards and I literally almost like stepped off the cliff, and it was not as scary as it sounds, but in hindsight, could have been really bad. The second one, there's a lot of animals on the trail and you have to get out of the way of the animals because they'll just boot you off the trail. So there was one time that a horse like kind of came at me, and just the lady behind me in our group, genuinely like mom instincts kicked in, and she picked me up by my backpack and like lifted me up and like put me on the side of the cliff. It was crazy because this horse was coming straight at me. So that was another one. But the third one, and the one that you guys probably are wondering the most about, is there was one day on base camp day where I felt so sick, and I was like, my body could be shutting down on me right now, and like I wouldn't be shocked if this is the end. Like this could be what it feels like to be dying right now, and I would believe that. Obviously I made it, obviously I'm fine and healthy. Alright, next question. Biggest encouragement while you were hiking? Like hands down the biggest encouragement was just everybody back home. I felt like we had a lot of people tune into our experience, whether that was from Instagram or just family and friends who were texting us. And every once in a while I'd get service, and it would just be like the right time that I just needed a little bit of encouragement, and there was tons of messages. So thank you guys so much for all your support. If you sent any messages, we definitely read them, we definitely saw them, and they definitely helped. If you're going on this trek, make sure you've got family and friends who are going to be supporting you, because it makes a big difference. Do you want to do it again? I would say, like in hindsight, knowing what I know now, I still would do it again. I wouldn't do it a second time just because I feel like I got that experience, but I would do another trek. I'm very interested in doing more trekking, so I'm definitely looking more into that. Next question, how was it sleeping in the tea houses? So the way the Everest Base Camp trek works, you hike through these little towns of people who have literally lived there at like 16,000 feet their entire lives, and they've built little tea houses for the trekkers to be able to stay in. This is how they make money too, is by having the trekkers come through and pay for food and things like that. So that was a really cool part of the experience, is truly the whole time I felt like I was immersed in the Nepalese culture, which was really fun and a really special touch that I didn't really fully anticipate, but I loved. The tea houses as you go up have less and less resources, which I was prepared for, somebody told me, but that's again something you don't really think about until you're there. But at the end, yeah, it was pretty much just like plywood, walls, you're sleeping on like a piece of wood plank, like community outside bathrooms. By bathroom, I mean like a hole in the ground. So you definitely get less and less resources, and everything on the whole trek is either brought in by yak or by person on their back. So obviously they don't have a ton of resources, so they're just working with what they got. Next question, how heavy were the bags that you were carrying? So you're allowed 33 pounds in your kit, which is the big blue bags that we had. And these were carried by yaks. Every night they carried our bags to the tea houses, the next tea houses. I think it is very rare that you can, or people do, carry their kits by themselves. Like I said, this is the way the Nepalese people make money, is by this tourism, so they prefer that you use the locals to help you with these kind of things. So you can either do porter or yaks. We chose yaks, so yaks carried our kits all the way up. And then you have your backpack that you have every day. So you pack up your kit every morning and you don't see it till that night. So you have to make sure you have everything that you need. And the weather changes so much in the Himalayas. So we had like all these layers, and I had all this camera equipment, food. You have at least 2 liters of water on you. So I would say my backpack weighed anywhere between 18 at its heaviest and like 15 at its lightest, which doesn't sound like a lot of weight, but when you're trekking for 10 hours, it's heavy. It is heavy. Show us some of the pictures that you took that you thought were the most beautiful in your opinion. Yeah, here are some pictures that I took.
Stranded like a boat in the sand. Just the thought of not spreading my wings drives me crazy. Dressing up.
Next question, if you had asthma, could you do this hike? Yes, because I have asthma and I did do this hike. In my opinion, like, I felt like, honestly, I was more prepared for the lack of oxygen at the altitude because I have asthma, because I'm used to exercising when I can't breathe. So everybody else was like, I can't breathe, and I'm like, oh, like, this is how I normally feel when I exercise, like, oh. So I did feel like that one thing actually helped me, but I didn't really feel like my asthma was problematic until the last day when I was like really pushing it physically, and then I did feel it a little bit more, but I didn't ever have to use my inhaler. What was the bathroom situation like? The whole time you're using mainly Eastern toilets. They don't have a lot of Western toilets. There's no toilet paper, you have to bring your own toilet paper, and yeah, some of them were better than others, but that's just a part of the trek that you're just gonna have to come to terms with, but you make do. Average temp at morning, midday, and night. I feel like we really lucked out because I have heard it can get quite cold with clear skies. We only had like one day that I feel like it was really cold while we were hiking. That being said, it is still like 20, 30 degrees. Like, it's not warm. You definitely still need layers. Midday, it got really warm. I think it's just because the sun like feels so much hotter, where it was like 20 degrees and we were actually outside sun tanning. And I literally have like tan lines. You can see on my hand, that's a tan line from my trekking poles, from hiking with my trekking poles and my strap right there. So it feels warmer than you think it would, but it's still cold, so make sure you have your layers. But I would say average temperature in the morning was like in the teens, then in midday it'd like go up to 20s, 30s, and then at night it'd get cold again, but you're usually like really bundled up in like a sleeping bag, so it felt okay to me. Would you advise against or recommend going solo? I would totally recommend it. The whole trip felt incredibly safe, and there's also so many other trekkers, like all the solo travelers that I met became like almost a part of our group because we would see them so often. So while I don't think I could do it solo because I definitely needed people to like be there and supporting me, there were definitely people who did do it solo, and it seemed like they had a great time. Is there electricity and Wi-Fi in the tea houses? And if you paid, how much was it? This is something that I would not bank on if you're going. So the way that it works is all of their power relies on solar power. So if it's cloudy or snowy or rainy, which a lot of times it is, then you don't have power. So we lucked out a little bit, and I think that we had more power than a lot of people do usually when they trek. So I was able to get Wi-Fi, and every tea house I was able to buy Wi-Fi. So we use solar power banks or just charging banks. Sometimes the tea houses will have like a group charging station that they have where you can like pay to have your stuff charged, but they have to like keep it overnight to be able to charge it. It takes forever. A lot of people in my group chose to do that. I was fine with the solar bank, so that kind of worked for me. Next question, why couldn't you eat meat? So like I said before, everything on the trail is either carried by yak or person, and it takes days to get to those last tea houses, so everything perishes. You can't eat anything that is fresh or needs to be refrigerated. There's no refrigerators, so we didn't eat any meat at all on the entire trek. Everything was vegetarian. So all that they feed you is carbs. They don't feed you any protein besides eggs. We would have like a plate of pretty much rice, potatoes, some kind of noodle, and then like a tortilla or like a piece of bread. And like that would be our meal, where it's literally like carb, 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 carb. And it's because they want to fill you with as many calories as they can, because they know that you're going to be burning probably 3 times that in the day. Worst experience on the trek. So we got to base camp, and the base camp day is like a 10-hour hiking day, and you're at 17,000 feet, so everything's hard. I remember that morning we even were like changing into our clothes, and me and my roommate were like out of breath. Like actually we were like like just putting on our clothes, and I'm like, this is not gonna be good. So you hike, and it's an incredibly hard physical day. That last day, if you've done it, like, you know, and if you haven't done it, there's not even a way I could fully describe it to you how difficult it is, but it's hard. And you get to a place and you drop your stuff, and then you do that last trek to base camp. It takes like 3 hours to get there. And it's so difficult they even have you drop like all your stuff. They make you empty out a lot of what's in your backpack just to make it a little bit easier. So we finally get there after trekking for 7 hours. We get to base camp. We're all excited, happy, right? Adrenaline's pumping. Then you forget you have to hike 3 hours back. And that was the worst 3 hours of my life. Like, I think just after like not having the adrenaline anymore that day and being so exhausted, and the best way I can describe the trek to you is like you slowly feel like you are dying in like multiple different ways, where you're slowly not getting enough food, like you're slowly exhausting your body, you're also slowly depriving your body of sleep because you can't sleep, and then you like don't even have oxygen at that point. So like in so many ways you just feel terrible. But I had the adrenaline kind of masking that, and then all of a sudden I don't have the adrenaline anymore. So then I think I like got the like altitude sickness, and my head hurt so bad. And then I got back to the tea house and sat down, and like my head hurt so bad I couldn't hear anybody talking around me. Like I felt bad, but felt fine after. Got better, obviously, but for like that like evening was definitely the hardest part of the trek for me, and I definitely felt probably the sickest I've ever felt in my life. Next question, how excruciating was the soreness and pain though? Interestingly enough, I felt like we all felt pretty sore day 1, 2, and 3, and after that, I don't remember ever feeling sore. Like genuinely, I felt like my body felt great. My body could do anything that we did and push it to do during the day, and I'd feel fine the next day. So that was not too bad. Definitely not the worst part of the trek. Next question, is weight gain / loss a legit thing? Yes, 100%. Like I said before, you are maybe eating 800 calories a day, and you are burning anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000. Even just with the altitude, it makes your heart beat faster, which makes you burn more calories. And my mom even one night got an alert from her watch that said, "Congratulations on your workout. You just burned 500 calories, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and she had just been sleeping." Like, she literally burned 500 calories in her sleep. So you are burning all kind of calories, and you just don't have the food to be able to sustain that. So everybody pretty much loses weight. I would say people in our group lost anywhere from 5 to 12 pounds. Your pants are gonna feel loose, so don't buy big pants because all of us were kind of tying extra tight or sharing belts and things like that. Make sure you're prepared. How problematic were the oxygen levels there? From my US medical education point of view, problematic. In the United States, at least in Texas, if you are under 90% oxygen saturation, which means your blood having 90% oxygen, you go in, like, you should be in the hospital and like put on oxygen. It changes with elevation. So as you get to different altitudes, the amount of oxygen in the air gets lower. So that 90% can kind of go down a little bit, because you're not gonna have 90% when you're at 70,000 feet. Like, there's just not that much oxygen in the air. So their problematic levels go down. But base camp day, they told us that if you are under 60,000 that's when they send you home, which is frightening. That is scary. So I'll put up a sheet and you can kind of look at it. This is like the amount of oxygen in the air at the different cities we went to. I think my oxygen saturation was shockingly high. I was pretty much in the 90s every day until like 2 or 3 days before base camp. Then I dipped into the 80s, and I wouldn't be surprised if at base camp mine was in the 70s. Like, I definitely felt like I was pretty low. I did meet a lot of people on the trek and coming home from the trek who were obviously having altitude sickness, and all of their numbers were in the 50s. That's something that's just part of the trek. Next question is, how were you really feeling? Did you act like you were feeling better than you were? For me, I really did feel pretty good up until like day 7, and then I got it. And then I was like, oh. And so I just kind of think it fluctuates for different people. Different people's bodies really respond to the altitude very differently. And there are times when like everybody kind of feels sick, and then you can be 20 minutes later and you're like on top of the world. So for me, truly what I showed is how I felt, and I did feel good up until like day 7, and then it just kind of slowly went down until base camp day. I was like not feeling good. I was bad. So I really was feeling about as good as I showed. I do think part of it though is mental, and if you let yourself think too much about like, I feel like I can't breathe right now, then it gets in your head and you feel worse. So I did try to like pretend that I was feeling better a little bit. And we have hardest part versus best part. The hardest part for me, I just think it's really difficult to have all of those different like situational things all at the same time. And so, like I said, like you can prepare for some things and other things you can't, but the thing that you can't prepare for is having all of those all at the same time. And I didn't quite really anticipate how much I wasn't going to be able to sleep, and like how hungry I was going to feel. And so you're like hangry and you're exhausted and you have a headache and like all these things all at the same time. And so like that was the hardest part for me, was dealing with all of that at the same time. There was definitely a few nights I would wake up and like actually like had to tear off like my hat and like my shirt because I thought I was not breathing. And I was with my roommate and she would fall asleep before me, and there was a couple times like I couldn't sleep because I thought that she was dying. Like I thought she was not being able to breathe, which sounds so sad, and it is sad, but like her breathing literally sounded like she was suffocating in her sleep, and it was scary. So like those are things that are like hard and that people don't really prepare you for until you're there. But I would say like the best part of that is learning that like, oh, you can push through all of that, and like not to sound cheesy, but you really do understand like, oh, I can do anything. Like if I can literally do this where everything sucks and I'm still doing it, like I can do anything. And so that to me was the best part of it, was just pushing through that mental challenge and like finally making it there. And that is it. I hope that answers some more of your questions that you had. I could talk for hours and hours about my experience. It was so crazy and so out of this world, and I'm so glad that I did it. So thank you guys again for your support and for following along in my journey. Let me know if you guys want a gear haul and I'll get that to you. But yeah, if you are thinking of going, you definitely should. It was incredible. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.